The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for Virginia EVV. We're going to send claims with EVV data. This is a new feature that we've recently released for the state of Virginia relative to how their EVV information is submitted on claims information. My name is Nadine Sturgis. I am the Director of Billing and Special Projects, and I am joined by Tony Ann, who is our Billing Specialist in Virginia, as well as Mimi, who is our T&I Specialist for Virginia, and she is also our point person for scheduling in Virginia. And so between the two of them, they know all things scheduling and billing. If at any point you have questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I want to talk a little bit about EVV in general and how Therap, we use the scheduling module to capture that EVV information. And so many of you probably have the scheduling module. If you don't, please take note that today we are not going to cover the scheduling module in detail. We have quite a few webinars and user guides on our help and support site, so they'll help answer your questions. And if you continue to have questions after looking at that information or at any time, please feel free to reach out to any of us at Therap. You can see here we capture most of our EVV information from the schedule slot there. You can collect your service information, individual information as far as who the service is being provided to, the staff that provides that service, as well as the location. And so you can schedule those slots, or you can do a self check-in, and maybe services are created in a way that they are not able to be pre-scheduled, and you can, on the fly, use your mobile device to check in and check out. After you've collected all of that information, there's lots of reports for a variety of people who may need to view or look at that information. In the case of Virginia here, we're going to take that EVV information and we're going to submit that on your claims. So let's take a look a little bit at what EVV is, the type of information that is mandated to collect by EVV. So currently, some of that information is collected on claims, is submitted on claims already. You have your type of service, which is your service description code. The individual that's receiving services, we pull that from the service authorization, and then the date of service, that's going to be captured at your check-in and check-out date. Those three pieces of information are currently already submitted on claims, any other claims that you submit to Virginia Medicaid. In addition here, what we're going to do is we're going to use the scheduling module to capture the location of the service at the time that the staff checks in and checks out. And we're going to capture who the staff is that's providing that service, the begin and end time. And that's a little different because most of the time with a claim, you're submitting the number of units for a particular date or an individual. In the case of EVV, we're actually going to send that time of the begin time and the end time, and as well as the billing unit. So there's additional information that's going to be submitted with the claim there. I also want to make note to take a look at Virginia Medicaid's website. They've put out quite a bit of information, and I'm going to reference a bit of information from their frequently asked questions document in our presentation today. The information that they've released is really detailed, and it's really important that you take a chance to get an opportunity to review that, and so that you're familiar with what the guidance is related to the services that are delivered by your agency. So we're going to take a look at the EVV information that gets submitted on your claim here. I wanted to summarize a bit of Virginia-specific rules. So we have about 4 HCPCS codes that require EVV information for personal care, for respite, and for companion. You also want to make sure that the staff you have a first and last name on their login page, as well as a EVV ID for that staff. Virginia Medicaid hasn't said that it is specific to any ID that they are issuing. That's a provider specific ID. So as long as you have a unique ID for each staff, then that'll get sent along on that claim file. Also, when you have multiple sessions in the same day, subsequent sessions are required to have a modifier of 76 on there. So we're going to have, that's going to be hard coded in our system. And so when you create multiple EVV sessions, say you have a session in the morning and then a session later on in the afternoon, you don't have to put that modifier anywhere within the system. That's automatically hard coded, and we will automatically add that to claims for the of the same date of service. So your morning and afternoon session will both have claims submitted, but then the second session will have that modifier on it. Also, each EVV session is equal to one line of billing. So your morning session is one line and your afternoon is a second line. When claims are adjudicating in Virginia Medicaid, they treat each line as its own individual claim, which is why in our system, everything is a single service line. Because then when that remittance comes back and that 835 gets remitted, that payment information is issued by service line. It's not issued for the entire claim because they treat each service line as a claim. And so any EVV session that doesn't produce billing units. So say if you have a session that's only 15 minutes long, that's not enough for a full billing unit, it will be, in our system, it'll be created as billing data, but it won't be submitted on your claim because there's no billing units to report. And what Virginia Medicaid has said is that those units should be retained within your system to validate the claims later on, because they have the rollover of minutes. Those 15 minutes can be rolled over to the following session, and that following session, time in, time out, that we're submitting on the claim is not quite enough for an entire unit, but you have 15 minutes from a previous session that can be rolled over and created additional billing units. So the times that are submitted may not always match the billing units because of this rollover. And that's something that you want to be aware of in our system. There's two different things that are really unique to Virginia billing. Is one, the rollover, and two, the rounding. So all of the units that are listed for these HCPCS codes are 1 hour units, which means that you have to have at least 60 minutes of service in order to bill for one unit. However, if you have leftover minutes from a previous session, you can roll them over into the following sessions. And so our system will do that automatically, and you don't have to be aware of that yourself. There's also rounding, and we have clarified this. This is also listed in that EVV FAQs that you want to be aware of. So the rounding, you can only round once during a month period. And so in our system, the way in order to make sure that we capture all of the billing data, we're going to generate billing data just once at the end of the month, so that we have all of that time, so that all of those rollover minutes and that rounding can be applied appropriately. If you generate billing data for less than a monthly period, we can't determine whether that rounding has happened or not. And so that's why it's important to do it on a monthly basis, because then we're going to automatically round that half up at the end of the month on the last date of service for that month. So those 30 minutes will be rounded up. So as we get into the system here, we're gonna take a look at this and see how it all works. So I am in the Virginia session account here. And so when you log in, there's a few different pieces that we're going to want to set up. So the first thing we're going to look at is some of our user privileges. In the user privilege here, if I take a look at my user privileges, I want to make sure that I have both this EVV billing conversion, and what that allows me to do is when I click generate billing data, it takes billing data from the scheduling module and converts it to billing data. So anybody that's going to be clicking generate billing data will need that. We also need the billing admin to do any of your billing setup, as well as if you are a schedule admin and you want to set up some of your scheduling. Mimi's going to walk through that piece in a little bit. We're going to go through, you're going to need that scheduling admin piece. Let's take a look at our super roles. And if I look at the super role here, so we're going to need anything under the billing section here, you're going to need to create and manage your service authorizations and billing data. And then down below for scheduling, you're going to need the schedule view and schedule edit. And that may not be appropriate for everybody, but if you're managing the schedule, you want to make sure that you have those privileges. Okay. One thing I want to take a look at is to be aware of the dates of service that we're looking at here. EVV data has to be billed with July dates of service. So that means that we do have some additional setup here in the billing module. And so we're going to need to set up service authorizations. Your service authorizations, you want them to be in effect at least for the month of, or be in effect at least for July 1st. So if I go down, let's get into the billing setup here. So under the funding source, you can see I have DMAS as my funding source, and my payer is this VA MMIS. It's really important to have this as your payer. There are other payers listed in Virginia, but that VA MMIS is really what's going to be used to send the EVV data to Virginia Medicaid. I don't think there's any additional questions on that. So just know that's important to have the right payer listed here. Also on that payer, there's a section here that says your vendor. You can choose Therap as your EVV vendor because it will link to the exception codes that are available in the scheduling module. So you want to make sure that you list your Therap as your EVV vendor, and then that payer is going to be that Virginia MMIS. The other items that are listed for Virginia Medicaid have been deactivated, so that's why it's really important that MMIS there is selected. Let's get into some description codes now. So on your service description code, because we're going to have some services, let's open this up, this companion services here. You can see I have the S5135. And then what's really important is this VA EVV service has to be marked as yes. If this is not indicated, then those services that you collect data on within the scheduling module will not send information, the EVV information on your claims. So, and also know that your rounding your time calculation here has to be set to 1 hour and then down, and your smallest increment is 60 minutes. So that's true of all of the EVV services that are required in Virginia. The rounding that happens at the end of the month where you can round half up, we do that automatically based on having this VA EVV service checked here. I also want to draw your attention to the fact that we've labeled these description codes differently. You can see these ended on 6/30, and this one is the new one that we're going to use as of 7/1. You can see this here has this marked as the EVV service as no, because I've already used that. So you'll want to create new description codes for your EVV services. We recommend putting a date in there because it's just helpful to manage when you're looking at service codes only from a drop-down, especially like on the scheduling module, where staff may have to select a service. They're gonna see that description on the scheduling when they check in and check out. Also note, I did not put that modifier 76 in here. You don't need to put that in the description code because that's hard coded in. So the next thing that we'll have to set up here is the duration calculation rule. Down again under your billing admin, the duration rule is related to the time duration that we're going to collect for billing. You have a few options when you do your duration calculation rule. You can do total duration, not more than the scheduled duration, or the duration within the scheduled time. Most people select total duration, and what that means is that you're going to select the time between when the staff checks in and checks out. If for some reason you wanted to limit that to either maybe not more than the scheduled duration. So if somebody is scheduled from 2 to 4, that's a 2-hour slot. And if the staff were to check in, let's say they checked in at 1:45 until 4:30. That means there is that we're going to take only the total duration. Your slot was scheduled for 2 hours, so we're only going to take 2 hours of that check-in time. Obviously, if they didn't check in for a full duration of 2 hours, we're not going to take 2 hours. We'll only take in the amount of time that they actually checked in for up to the total duration of the slot that was scheduled. Duration within the scheduled time, which means that if there's a slot that is 2 to 4, we are going to, and the staff checked in at 1:30 and then checked out at say 4:10. We're only going to take the time, or I'm sorry, maybe they checked out at 3:10. So between 2 and 3:10 is the duration that's within the scheduled time that they checked in for. So we'll take that hour and 10 minutes into consideration for billing. And that's a good way to look at it, is that you want to see what time do we consider for billing. It's what the time that we grab from the scheduling module to create the billing data. And then after that time that we consider for billing, it goes through all of the rounding and the rollover and all of those other calculations. So the duration calculation rule sets up what time we should consider for billing. It doesn't actually generate your billing. So for our demonstration today, on our service authorizations, we're going to use total duration as our duration calculation rule because that's most common. Unit calculation rule is the next piece that we're going to have to set up. You probably don't have this yet. You may have a unit calculation rule, but you may have to create or modify what you currently have. You can see here for the special rule, we have Virginia EVV. And when you select Virginia EVV, you can see these other options here are grayed out. That's because we're going to hard code in all of those other rules that are in play for Virginia. We're not going to necessarily, we're going to bundle it for each session, but each EVV session is going to go on your claim. Okay, so that's important for that. So let's take a look at the service authorization piece. On my authorization, we're going to take a look at Ethan here. And we'll look at Ethan services for companion. And now his date of service, we've obviously played this as a demo account, and we've tested out the functionality. And so our begin date here is January. However, yours are going to begin on, make sure they begin on July 1st, because you want to make sure that you capture that that check mark on the service description code. So when I go to update here, I'll make this larger. You can see when I've created this, some of the information came over from my description code. I have a PA number. My method of data collection is going to be EVV. And I entered my unit calculation rule along with that duration calculation rule. Okay. My automatic time unit calculation has been brought in from my description code, so I don't need to change that. And then the authorized units per period, this should be set to ignore because we have all sorts of the rounding and the validation on the billing data generation. This section here will not be taken into consideration for your billing. However, you may want to enter daily or weekly units because when you're on the scheduling module, these are going to be used as references when scheduling somebody. So you can put in approximate times of how often you anticipate somebody to be scheduled for services. And so you can make sure that you meet those necessary scheduling requirements. Also, one other piece I want to touch on the billing setup is claim templates. Many people use claimed templates in Virginia, which is extremely helpful. Let's take a look at a claim template that we already have for Ethan. And what that claim template does is it correlates a particular service code with the billing provider information for your organization. And so you're going to have to go through, because we're creating a new service description code, you'll have to go through and check that new service description code to be used when you're generating claims. So you don't have to redo claim templates, but you just want to update those and just check off that new service that you've created, and then you can update that. Okay. So let's go take a look at some of the scheduling setup.
Okay. So as far as the actual the scheduling setup, we know that we always have to give permissions in a super role in order for staff to be able to either access, whether they're just searching or viewing, approve schedules, or creating an edit, depending on whose responsibility it is. And so what I simply did was, and for those who are not aware of this actual user guide, it's, and sorry for making everyone dizzy, but it's called the list of roles. And what's nice about going into help and support and just typing in list of roles, it's going to basically give you the list of roles and shows you exactly what are the privileges that you are assigning to that super role, depending on the module that you're on. So if I just simply come down to where it says scheduling, okay, I'm going to have two super roles. Keep in mind that the scheduling admin that you're turning on within the administrative roles, that's going to be the person who's creating those schedules, okay, who's doing the provider setup, sorry. The provider setup, the staff setup, as well as checking off on the individuals who's going to be a part of that scheduling grid. Within the super roles, you have your schedule view, and then you have schedule edit. Now, your schedule view is just basically search and view approved schedules from the individual tab and the dashboard schedule section. So maybe this is the one that you'll give your direct support professionals. They'll be able to search and view any schedules that have been approved for the individual that's on their caseload. So they'll only be able to view those that they have access to, okay? When it comes to the scheduling edit or schedule edit, this is where maybe those are, you're giving access to managers that they can create and edit and approve caseload specific individuals and program-based schedules, okay? They could also view templates using the schedule template option on the individual tab. So that's basically from the super role section. These would be the two permissions that you would be turning on depending on what your staff needs to see. I'll go ahead and jump into my dashboard, okay? And I will show you where that is located once it loads. So if I go into my super role manage, okay, and I'm just going to open up the billing super role that we have within this account. And this is a demo account, so it's all fictional characters. I'm going to come down to scheduling. And there goes my scheduling view and edit. And again, the list of roles will explain to you exactly what each one does as far as permissions. Okay. Once you've turned on whatever needs to be turned on, depending on the super role, of course, you would go ahead and save. Okay. Another thing to also think about is making sure that for your users, that they do have the EVV ID added to their personal details section, okay, within their profile. And that's actually going to be located in personal details, okay, right below the emergency contact number 2. Okay, so that EVV ID would need to be added here under personal details for the user's profile. Okay. All right, so once, let's say you have that scheduling admin permission turned on within your user privileges, the person who's going to do the actual foundation setup, okay, from the admin tab, let's scroll down to, all the way down to the scheduling section from the admin tab. You have your provider setup and your staff. So of course, if you're creating those new service codes, as Nadine had mentioned, you would want to update everything else that you have already done within your scheduling module. So if staff is actually, if you're giving them the permissions to do self-check-in, okay, you would want to acknowledge that new service code and turn that on within your provider setup piece. And that's for those who will have access to self-check-in for those self-check-inable services. Okay. Another part of you just kind of doing some housekeeping, right, prior to July the 1st, would be to also go into the scheduling section again from the admin tab where it says staff, click on manage. So you can see that Tony Ann has been set up. Mimi has not been set up, but Nadine has also been set up. And I'll just go ahead and pick on myself. Okay. And then this is where you would turn on schedulable. If you are going to allow that person to enable their own self-scheduling, that they could, self-check-in from the actual app itself, from the web check-in. And then your service description code, this is where you're giving permission for that staff, okay, to be schedulable based on the services that you click off here. Okay. And again, choosing that new service that you have updated within the billing section. Okay. Choose all that applies, and then you would click save. Okay. And now you will see that although Tony Ann she's schedulable and she also has self-scheduling enabled, where when it comes to Mimi, she's schedulable, but Mimi cannot do her own self-checking. Okay. All right. Next piece that we were going to cover is from the actual agency tab. And so for those who have created those schedules where you bulk copy schedules moving forward, so maybe you've already created those, 6 months in advance, you would need to delete those and recreate that bulk copy of those schedules with the new service codes. And Tony Ann, feel free to jump in if I'm not covering exactly what needs to be covered when it comes to the bulk copy.
Very good.
Okay. All right. So if you've created already those, schedules in advance, you would have to delete those. Okay. So it's basically just bulk delete, recreate those schedules again, bulk copy, and approve moving forward. Was there anything else that I needed to cover from my end?
I think you got a lot of it. I don't think from setup perspective, I think we're good as far as to get service authorizations, make a couple tweaks to your scheduling setup, and then make sure you want to make sure that the right service code is listed on those scheduled slots. So modify that, and then I think we're good to go. Thanks, Mimi. I'm gonna take the screen back if that's okay.
Thank you.
All right. So now that we've got some of your setup set, we're going to look at generating some billing data. And because there's so many different rules around the billing, I broke some of the, well, Tony Ann helped here, go through some of we broke it down in Excel because I wanted you to see exactly what we have listed in the scheduling module and how that's going to work to convert to billing data. So there's a few things to consider here. One is that 76 modifier, how things round, how things roll over. So most of the slots that we created are about 60 minutes. So we're going to use the month of May as our test day here. And the first slot is going to create one billing unit because we have a total duration of 60 minutes that's been checked into. Just on May 4th here, we have 2 slots. Each of them are going to be an hour, and we're going to get 1 billing unit for each slot. Now remember, every EVV session is a service line on billing. So on May 4th, we're going to have 2 billing lines, which equals 2 billing claims in Virginia. So you have 1 unit for the 3 to 4 p.m., and then you have a second unit for the 4 to 5 p.m. That 4 to 5 p.m., because it's the same service, same individual, same date of service, it's required to have that 76 modifier. So we're going to add that onto the claim automatically. May 7th, we have 60 minutes. Nothing is going to be rolled over, and we're going to have 1 unit of billing. On May 12th, we have 90 minutes. So that's not quite enough for 2 units. So we're going to take the extra 30 units. We're going to roll that over into the following session. So you can see it's not necessarily the following date. It's the following session that you have EVV for. So this duration and the units billed here, this happens at the point that you click generate billing data. So at that point is when all of that conversion happens in the system. So for May 15th here, we're going to create 2 billing units. There's a 60-minute session in here, and then there's 30 minutes left over from the previous session along with the 30 minutes here, so that's how we get those 2 billing units. The following session, there's going to be 45 minutes, not enough for a full billing unit, but we're going to roll that 45 minutes over into the following session. So now we have 1 hour and 45 minutes, and because it's the last session of the month, we're able to round half up. So if it's more than 30 minutes that we are carrying over, we're going to round half up. So for the entire month, you're going to get a total of 9 units. for 8 hours and 45 minutes of service for that entire month here, okay? So let's take a look at what that looks like within Therap. And again, it's important that you generate for the entire month. I'll show you our schedule. Oh, I clicked the wrong link. And take a look at all of our staff here. And for the month of May, so you can see these are the sessions that we have here. We have the 1st, we have 2 sessions on the 4th. This was where we're going to have that, we're going to end up getting that 4 to 5, that 4 to 5 session is going to have the 76 modifier. Each of these sessions here, we've just done a rough check-in and check-out for that information. 30 minutes from the 12th will get rolled over to the 15th. So we'll get 2 units for the 15th. And then on the 29th, we're going to get an extra 15 minutes from the 23rd. And we're going to get 2 units on the 29th, okay? So that's the data that we're going to click Generate Billing for. So let's go do that. Again, so on the Billing tab here. Now, because I have that EVV billing conversion, I have this EVV billing button here on the dashboard. And I'm going to work with companion services for the month of May. Now, remember, we're doing this for an entire month period. We want to make sure that you're generating billing data on a monthly basis, because that's how the billing rounding and rollover all happens. We only know to roll half up at the end of the month because you can only do it once during the month, which means you're going to generate billing once during the month. So you're going to do it at the end of the month after you have all of your information. Make sure that you look at that scheduling slot report. Make sure you have all of the right information on your slots. So if you review that service information before generating billing data, you can generate billing, generate claims, submit the claims, and get paid in a breeze. Most of your work comes up front to make sure that your service data is correct, because the rest chain of events of billing and claiming will then be error-free, because you've done all of the work up front to make sure that where you expected staff to check in, they actually have. You're not missing information. If you need to look at it that differently, or something doesn't look right to you, now is the time to look at that schedule to make sure that that information is correct. Okay.
Hey, Nadine.
So yes.
Real fast. In case there's a holiday too, I know that was in our discussions previous, we would still include that date, right? From if it was like, yeah, like if it was like January 1st. Yeah. So they would still even,
Yeah, definitely include the holidays, because they could be billable days. You want to make sure that we capture all of that information so that we know we're billing for an entire month period. Because the system looks at what is the beginning of the month and what is the end of the month. So even though your service documentation, like our documentation ended on May 29th was the last date, but I'm searching in here for up until May 31st. You have to make sure that you put the entire month range in here. Otherwise, the system doesn't recognize that you really are generating for an entire month. So it tells the system to put in all of those checks and balances there in the background. Thanks, Tony. That was a good point. So you can select all individuals by checking this box here. You'll probably have a whole bunch of individuals there that you've gone through. And then we're going to click Generate Billing Data. Okay. And then now you can see we have our billing data from the 1st, and then we have 2 pieces of billing data on the 4th. This is really significant because most of the time for CMS, you cannot have duplicate or double billing data or multiple pieces of billing data for the same service on the same date of service for the same individual. So this right here is pretty significant. We're going to take a look at our billing data. So for the 1st, you can see here I have 1 billable unit, and at the bottom we have this message here of all of we have different messages here for Virginia because of all of the background rules. So as you're investigating your billing data to see, did this do what you expected it to do, or, you were expecting to get 3 units, why do I only have 2 units? This system message here is going to be really useful in your search to navigate through the system and figure out why did the system do what it did. It tells you what is in place at the time that you click that button that says generate billing data. You can see I have that VA special rule in there from the unit calculation rule. I have the total duration that I selected in my authorization as well. The slot duration was 60 minutes, and we have 0 minutes that are rolling over because we checked in and checked out at the exact top of the hour, 3 and 4 p.m. So let's look at another piece of billing data. So let's take a look at the 4th. And here, again, I had that 1 hour, 60 minutes, nothing rolled over because, again, it was a 60-minute slot. And then let's look at the 2nd day of the 4th. Okay, now you can see that modifier 76, that's on there. I didn't have to put it in my system anywhere. I didn't put it on the description code. I didn't put it on the authorization. I didn't put it anywhere. That is there because our system knows that it's a duplicate or a subsequent billing for that day. Okay, again, I have all of my rounding rules at the bottom. Let's find one that has that rollover listed there. And we did that on the 23rd. Okay, so we had 0 units on the 23rd, and then, but that was when we had those 45 minutes. So we didn't bring over 45 minutes, but the next day is going to have those 45 minutes. So that was for the 23rd. So let's go look at the 29th. So on the 29th, now I have 2 units listed there, and you can see that 45 minutes was added from the previous slot. So that 23rd that had 0 billing units, 45 minutes have now been added to this slot here. Also, this slot was rounded half up, okay? Because this half up, it's the last date of service within the month. I generated until the 31st, so the system knows that this is the last session in that month, so it can round up based on the accumulation of those rollover minutes. So throughout the month, as the minutes roll over, at the end of the month, we're going to round half up. So it's really important that your settings are correct. Make sure that on your description code, it's 1 hour down, but that half up is going to be done based on the fact that you click generate billing data for a month period at a time. Okay. Also, if you notice there that we had billing data with 0 units. So let's go take a look at, let's do a billing data search really quick to see what's been generated for May. Oh, that's begin date. I didn't want that. I want service date. Okay, so here is an accumulation or a report of the information. And I'll sort it by the service date to make sure that's in order. So we have 1 unit for the 1st, 1 unit for the 4th, another unit for the 4th. There's those 2 service lines, the 7th, the 12th, and then we have 2 units on the 15th. The 23rd, again, this is another significant development, is because we had a 45-minute session. So you're going to have billing data that's created, but the billing unit is going to be 0. And what Virginia Medicaid has said is that they don't want you to submit a claim for those units that are 0, but you need to keep track of it in your system. Because when if an audit were to happen, you've billed 2 units on the 29th, so you want to make sure that you can account for where those 2 units came from, which is why we're creating that billing data in our system. So you have a record of it, but Virginia Medicaid is only going to see those pieces of billing data that have a unit. So when you build 2 units, but the session that we billed on the 29th, I think it was a 1 hour, it was a 1 hour session. So we did 3 to 4 on the 29th. but we're billing 2 units. So that's where you want that backup in the system for a record keeping there. Let's get into some claims here. Let's look at our claims. Let's go to the claim generation. So when we go to generating claims, same process as before. We have our companion services, and I'm going to generate for the month of May. Generating claims, you probably want to do it for the month. If you've generated your billing data for the month, you might as well generate your claim for the month. Make sure you click this add 1 service line per claim. We are going to do that because of the way that 835 comes back in the system. Again, Virginia Medicaid treats each one of those pieces of billing data that I just showed as its own service line. And so when the remittance comes back, they give information by each service line, which is why we do that single service line. They actually treat the service lines almost as their own individual claim, the way that they are reported on. And so I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to generate my claims. Okay, so you can see I have a whole bunch of claims here for even. Let's open up one of these. And the claim doesn't look significantly different, all right? But just know that we are going to take on that information that's from the scheduling module. You can see that billing data that's listed there. And on the billing data, it's connected to the EVV data. So all of that scheduling information is going to be sent on your claim. I don't have a modifier here. Let's go look at the 12. See if it's one here. So the 7th, so we have that 1 billing unit. Oh no, it was the 4th. That's what it was. The 4th had that 76 modifier in it. There we go. So on the 4th, we have that modifier there. And then on the first date for the 4th, we don't have the modifier, okay? So that's good. The reporting in your system might look a little different because you're going to have 2 claims, 2 billing data for the same data service for the same individual. Okay, so let's send off those claims real quick because that is Virginia Medicaid, and let's search for the month of May. And again, you can do a bulk claim send, or you can pick and choose your claims if you want to. Either way, just for demonstration purposes, I'm only going to send off a couple claims. And you can see those were sent off just like normal. So the way that you send claims is not going to change. One more thing is that if you're not getting an electronic remittance for Virginia Medicaid, you may want to consider contacting them about how to get that 835. When you get that 835 back, especially because you're going to have so many claims, single service line, and then with each of the sessions creating its own claim, it's just a large amount of data. And so when you're going through and checking for you know, your payments, and you really want to aggregate that as much as possible. So Virginia Medicaid has particular rules around how to apply for a service center number, and then they issue that 835 to your service center number. So then you'll be able to go to the
So I think what Nadine was trying to say before is that with that remittance advice, if it's not uploaded, then to manually upload or update that claim is going to take a lot of time, especially since everything is single service line. So usually in Virginia, you have to go through Conduit to you know, get that 835 placed in that Conduit website and then upload it from there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on you there.
No, I was just telling them that Conduit is usually where they get their 835s to upload.
Excellent, excellent. I do want to also take a look at that report that you talked about for the rolling duration. And so let's take a look at, so this is if you're not billing on a monthly basis, which we do recognize some providers do. we've created this report for Virginia specifically, which is rolling duration track for Virginia EVV per individual. You can see I just searched for rolling. This is a report of data that has not been included in that the monthly bundling piece. So really what it is if you were to bill on a weekly or a bi-monthly basis, it would, your system was automatically set to do that round down. And so you're not going to be able to capture that, the once a month round up. So you'll have to manually take billing data and change the number of units to do the half up per individual. Okay. So I've put in my month that I'm looking at. I just put in the month of February here. So you can see for the month of February, I have a slot here from the February 1st until February 2nd. And then those slots, there were actually 2 1-hour slots, I believe. Actually, no, because I think they were different. Let's take a look at what those slots are. Look at February here. Okay. So on the 1st, we have 3 to 4, so there's 1 hour. And then on 4 to 5, that's another hour. And then on the 2nd, we have 3:45. So there's 45 minutes on the 2nd and another 45 minutes on the 2nd. So we have about 90 minutes on the 2nd there. So when we pulled that report, you can see we had a total duration of 210 minutes. 30 minutes of that can be rolled over. And we've created 3 billing units. Now, on the 3rd, I added that session in later on. So that hasn't been billed yet. So we haven't we've generated it, but no billing units were used for billing. So if I wanted to add in additional time during the month of February, so let's go add a session. I'm going to add something really quick on the fly here. From 10 to 11 for his companion services. And most of the time you're going to make sure this is purely for demonstration. You want to make sure that when you're gathering your information that you get your address information, but purely to demonstrate the billing for that day. We did from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. Okay. Oh, let's just say staff forgot to check in and out. Okay. So we have another hour there on the 4th. So if I go to generate my billing data for the month of February, now remember, we have some billing data that's already been generated. And I'm going to go to my EVV billing for the companion services. Let's say I'm going to generate from the 1st through, I just entered in the 4th, so I'm going to do the 1st through the 4th. We're going to do Ethan, and we're going to generate that. You can say, hey, wait a second, billing cannot be generated because billing has already been generated for the same date or date range. Because you generated data for some of the dates that's in there, you can't regenerate that billing data. So what I want to do, I just entered for the 4th. So I really just want to generate for the 4th. I've already generated billing data for the 1st through the 3rd. So when I put in the 4th, it'll allow me to generate that billing data now. Okay, so now I have 1 unit for the 4th because I billed that hour. All right. Okay, you can see, and this will take into consideration if you have multiple sessions in the same date, it'll add the 76 modifier, but it won't apply the rounding correctly. So you'll have to manually maneuver that rounding. So let's go take a look at what this report library is going to show for us now. Let's go back. And again, let's look at February. And notice the search parameters here. I'm putting in the month and the year. rather than typing in numbers. So you can see I have one billing unit for the 4th. This is what I just added here. My total duration is 60 minutes. Nothing is rolling, and I've billed one unit from that. But this other one, this one above it, this 50 minutes that's rolling, we didn't automatically add that because it's not the date parameters are not set for that monthly time period. So you want to make sure best practice is to do the monthly billing. If you don't do the monthly billing, you can use this report to gauge what that rolling duration is. And then once during the month, you can go in and modify that billing data to add an extra unit to round up. And when you enter the billing data, you'll have to put a comment and just put a note to yourself in the future that says, hey, I'm rounding up here for my once during the month. So that is all of the pieces to that Virginia EVV. There's a lot to go through. Do we have any questions? Tony Ann, do you have any questions that have come through? Or if there's anything you think maybe some providers might be interested in that we may have?
The one most recent question was asking, I don't know of any way of getting, someone asked getting two 835s, which is their holdup, since they have two different billing systems. Is there any way around it? And I said,
so you want the 835 issued twice? No, actually, that's an interesting question. And that's not specific to Virginia, but most MMIS systems will only issue one 835 per NPI or per provider agency. So depending on your Medicaid enrollment, typically no, they won't. However, I would check with Virginia Medicaid, their EDI. They have an email or a call system that might be able to answer you that question definitively, but typically that's tricky to get multiple 835s like that.
I think that was the only other question, Nadine.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for your time today. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to Tony Ann or myself or anyone on the billing team or Mimi for any kind of scheduling questions. And have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.